Trapped on a driverless eerie bus, I met the mysterious man Lucas, and surprisingly, we have a family psychic pact. I was chased by Elias, who wanted to devour my soul fragments, and just escaped danger, and got home when I encountered a red-haired eerie figure approaching. The chill of midnight was creeping in, each icy needle seeming to pierce my skin. I stood in the corner of the abandoned restaurant, my fingertips clenched so tightly that they turned pale. The air before me seemed to warp and twist, and a translucent, ghostly figure slowly emerged from the shadows, enveloped in an unyielding cold that refused to dissipate. Mia, the ghostly figure fixed its gaze on me, its lips moving as if speaking, but the name it uttered carried a bone-deep chill, as though it had been summoned from the depths of a grave. The ghostly figure stared at me, its lips parting and closing again, uttering a single name. Mia? I unconsciously repeated the word after it. As soon as those words left my mouth, Chloe froze as if struck by lightning, her body going rigid before collapsing backward onto the chair behind her. How could you possibly know that name? Impossible. There's no way you could possibly know that name. Chloe murmured to herself, eventually reducing her words to nothing more than the repeated utterance of the single word, Mia. Just then, Mia's ethereal figure glanced deeply at me, and suddenly lunged toward Chloe's body. Chloe's body convulsed violently, and the ghostly figure plunged right into her. When Chloe's pupils refocused, I noticed not only that her gaze had changed, but that her entire demeanor had become utterly different as well. She looked at me, her voice laced with sorrow and unyielding bitterness. Don't help her. Help whom? I stared at the Chloe standing before me, yet through her flesh and skin, I could see Mia's shadow lingering just beneath the surface. Are you Mia? I asked, utterly shocked. Chloe just stared at me silently, without saying a word. She merely repeated, don't help her. The her she mentioned probably referred to Chloe, didn't it? Before I could even react, Chloe suddenly stood up, shoved me aside, and bolted out of the restaurant, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Her speed was astonishing, almost like a startled rabbit. I really had no idea where she'd run off to. I hope nothing bad has happened to her. It's not that I'm worried about Chloe herself. Rather, I'm afraid that if anything happens to her, it might drag me into it too. She's always been spoiled and arrogant, and considering all the things she's done to Mia, I've never felt any sympathy toward her. So, helping Chloe? Don't even think about it. I glanced at my watch. It had only been half an hour since I'd started arguing with Chloe, and it wasn't even 9 o'clock yet. I'd better hurry and catch the bus back home. Moving to a place so far from school, the biggest hassle is the inconvenient transportation. I didn't dare linger outside for too long and hurried toward the bus stop. Luckily, it wasn't too late yet. There was still the last bus. As soon as I got on the bus and sat down, drowsiness hit me all at once. Thinking that the ride from here to my stop would take 40 or 50 minutes, I simply set my alarm and planned to take a quick nap. I'd been sleep-deprived for so long that I hadn't expected to fall into such a deep, dreamless slumber while swaying gently on the bus. Ding-dong. The alarm suddenly went off, jolting me awake with a start. The bus cabin was eerily silent. The sound of the alarm echoed repeatedly through the empty space, sounding like the tolling of a death knell. My heart rate shot up instantly, my hands and feet grew icy cold, and my back was soaked with cold sweat. This wasn't normal quietness. It was a deathly silence, so profound that even the sound of my own breathing seemed magnified many times over. It felt as if the entire world had shrunk down to just me and this runaway steel monster. I rubbed my bleary eyes, blinked repeatedly several times, and only then dared to confirm that the scene before me wasn't a nightmare. On this bus, besides me, there was just a young man sitting by the window diagonally ahead. The driver's seat was empty, yet the steering wheel was turning slightly, and the bus was still moving forward smoothly. Fear surged over me like a tidal wave. My scalp felt as if it were about to explode. Every single hair on my body stood on end, and my teeth began to chatter uncontrollably. I bit down hard on my lip to keep from screaming, digging my fingers into the crevices of the seat so tightly that my nails almost broke. Just what kind of place was this? Had I already died and fallen into some terrifying illusion? I rubbed my bleary eyes again, nearly thinking I'd misread. It was true. On this bus, besides me, there was just a young man sitting by the window diagonally ahead. Even the driver had vanished without a trace. My scalp suddenly felt as if it were on fire, and the fine hairs on my arms stood on end. What on earth was going on? Why was the bus driving itself? I shot up from my seat, but when I looked out the window, I found that everything outside was pitch black. Apart from the dim light inside the cabin, there wasn't a single other source of illumination. My legs went weak, and I slumped back into my seat. What kind of bizarre situation had I gotten myself into this time? The bus kept moving forward, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't make it stop, not to mention I couldn't even open the door. I turned my gaze toward the young man sitting across from me. He looked about my age, maybe in his early 20s. The dim light cast varying shades of shadow across his face, making it impossible to see his full expression. All I could tell was that his complexion carried an unusual heaviness, one that didn't match his age at all. A strange aura seemed to surround him, an aura so intense that it made people instinctively keep their distance, so eerie that no one dared to get close. I had no idea whether he was human or ghostly, nor did I know if he was somehow part of this bizarre bus ride. Right now, it's just the two of us in the car. His presence doesn't bring me any peace. It actually makes my fear even worse. Who knows? Maybe he'll suddenly pounce on me, his face twisted into a ferocious snarl. If you don't want to die, little sister, just sit down. He'd been staring out the window, his profile turned slightly toward the darkness, as if he could see right through the endless blackness and glimpse something beyond. My gaze had lingered on him for barely 2 seconds when he somehow sensed it immediately, slowly turning his head to look at me. The movement was unnaturally smooth, imbued with an uncanny sharpness that seemed utterly inhuman. He was a strikingly handsome young man, wearing a faded black t-shirt, cargo pants, and well-worn, scuffed-up Doc Martens. Under his soft, dark hair falling across his forehead were eyes so deep they seemed bottomless. Their pupils appeared to hold swirling eddies within them. A smile hovered only on the surface of his lips, never reaching the depths of his eyes. All over him emanated a raw, masculine wildness, yet mixed with an indescribable chill, a vibe that made him feel like a hunter prowling along the very edge of night. I don't know whether he's a human or a ghost, but right now, it's just the two of us in this car, and no matter how you look at it, it's downright creepy. If you don't want to die, little lady, just sit down. He'd been gazing out the window with his profile turned toward the side, but suddenly seemed to notice my gaze and turned his head to face me. He was a really handsome young man, wearing a black t-shirt and cargo pants, paired with a pair of Dr. Martens boots. Under his soft, dark hair that fell gently across his forehead were deep-set eyes that exuded both intensity and a hint of laughter. His whole demeanor radiated masculine strength. My intuition told me he was as much a living person as I was. Hearing his words, I hesitated for a split second, then obediently sat back down in my seat. After all, it's always good advice to listen to others and make sure you're well fed. But the situation we were in was completely beyond anything I'd ever expected, and I honestly had no idea what to do next. After thinking it over for a moment, I scooted over toward him and sat down one empty seat away, quietly asking, "Excuse me, do you happen to know what's going on here? Can we get off this bus?" "Sure, we can," he replied casually. "But we'll have to wait. Wait until this bus reaches its final stop." I don't usually take this bus very often, so I've never paid much attention to where its final stop is. But given the situation we're in now, that final stop probably isn't the original one anymore, is it? Why is this bus acting like this? And why are there only the two of us on board? I pressed him further. Suddenly, he let out a snort of laughter, his eyes flickering with an ambiguous expression as he raised an eyebrow and looked at me. "Because we're just unlucky, that's all." Instantly, panic gripped me. There was really nothing I could say in response to that. Indeed, we were incredibly unlucky. How else could it be that it was precisely me and him who'd ended up trapped together in this eerie bus? Aside from the faint sensation of the vehicle moving, everything around us was unnaturally silent. My phone had no signal. There was absolutely no way I could call for help. Another hour or so passed, and then the bus slowed to a stop. The doors opened simultaneously, and a bone-chilling gust of cold air rushed in. I shivered all over, and the little brother who'd been lounging lazily against the seat finally stood up. As soon as he got to his feet, I realized just how tall he was, and at that moment he was looking down at me with his eyes lowered. "Are you staying on the bus, or are you coming with me?" he asked. I felt both scared and torn, utterly at a loss for what to do.
3,
2, 1. No sooner had the words left his mouth than he suddenly bent down and scooped me up in his arms. Before I could even register what was happening, he'd already hoisted me onto his shoulders and started walking toward the exit. "You've been dawdling so long about making up your mind. I'm starting to think by the time you figured it out, the ashes will already be scattered." His tone carried a hint of disdain. This guy's sharp tongue was practically on par with Evan's. Just like that, this stranger carried me off the bus. As soon as I stepped out, goosebumps broke out all over my body. The temperature outside was so much lower than inside that it was hard to believe we were in the middle of summer. It felt as cold as early winter. After we got off, the driverless bus unexpectedly started up and drove away on its own, leaving me standing alone with this guy in an area littered with abandoned buildings. The whole place was filled with unfinished construction projects, and the surroundings were utterly deserted. The guy set me down, and in the darkness, I couldn't make out his expression clearly. All I could hear was him saying, "I'm the one who dragged you into this mess today. Stay close to me, and once this is over, I'll take you back." Are we really going to make it back? Though my words sounded skeptical, my feet had other plans. They followed him closely, without a hint of hesitation. "Of course we will," he said without even turning around. "As long as you listen to me and don't do anything stupid, I'll definitely get you home safely." Quickly, I nodded. After all, I do understand the principle. If you don't go looking for trouble, you won't get into it. "All right, I'll definitely listen to you. By the way, what should I call you?" I asked. The young man glanced around cautiously. Upon hearing my question, he still didn't turn around, but he finally gave his name. "Lucas." I blinked twice. That name was so lovely, just like a male lead from a romantic drama. "My name is Lila," I replied softly. Exchanging names is simply basic courtesy. As soon as he heard my name, the figure ahead of me suddenly froze. I could feel his body stiffen in an instant. Though I couldn't see his expression clearly, the strange vibe he gave off was unmistakable. "What's wrong?"
Do you know me?
I asked, puzzled. Was there something wrong with my name? Why did it elicit such a strong reaction from him? Lucas didn't answer. He just started walking again. Seeing that he didn't want to say much, I wisely kept my mouth shut. In a moment like this, staying close to him was the most important thing, because if we got separated, we might really never find our way back. These unfinished skyscrapers standing tall in the night looked like crouching beasts. Their empty windows and doorways resembled gaping maws, waiting patiently for prey to walk right into them. I had no idea where Lucas was headed or what he was planning to do, but right now, all I could do was follow in his footsteps. Just then, the soul-calling jade around my neck suddenly grew unbearably hot, hotter than it had been last time. I'd specifically asked Evan earlier. The hotter the jade became, the closer the fragment of my lost soul was to me. Now the heat was so intense that my skin was turning red. I gasped sharply, quickly tucking the jade beneath my clothes, trying to shield it from further contact with my skin. It was scorching. "Are you okay?" Lucas stopped in his tracks and turned to look at me. I didn't know how to explain it, so I just glanced around anxiously. With the soul-calling jade heating up like this, my soul fragment must be somewhere nearby. But I'm completely powerless. I wouldn't even dare to go searching on my own, let alone drag Lucas down with me. "Just tell me what's going on?" Lucas asked, staring straight at me. "You can trust me." I stared back at him, my heart churning like an ant on a hot pan. Hearing his words, I couldn't help but snap back. "Why should I trust you?" Lucas gave a helpless smile and spread his hands wide. "It's okay if you don't believe me. After all, it's not like I'm the one who'll end up unlucky." His voice was full of confidence, and even in this eerie environment, he somehow managed to remain strangely calm. As the temperature of the soul-calling jade kept rising, the anxiety inside me only grew fiercer. All right, stop turning around. I think I've got a pretty good idea of what's going on, Lucas said, pointing at my chest. It's fine if you don't want to tell me. At that moment, the soul-calling jade was emitting a faint glow, standing out vividly against the pitch-black surroundings. The soul-calling jade, this spiritual jade guides souls. He suddenly leaned down, bringing his face close to my chest and staring intently at the jade with great interest. Although I knew he was looking at the jade itself, the proximity still made me feel slightly uncomfortable, and I unconsciously tried to shift away. Who would have guessed that he'd suddenly raise his hand and press it firmly onto my shoulder, pinning me in place? What are you doing? I immediately went on guard. Lucas's eyes were shadowy and hard to make out in the darkness. After a few seconds, he straightened up and said in a light, cheerful tone, "Tell me, how could something like this possibly happen by sheer coincidence? Looks like I'll have to reintroduce myself." "Huh," I said, completely baffled by what he was saying. "Hello, Lila, my family's covenant fiancé." Those words struck me like a bolt of lightning, delivering a shock no less intense than the scorching heat of the soul-calling jade. I couldn't help but reach up to rub my ears, half convinced that I was hearing things. Staring at him in disbelief, I asked, "Could you please repeat that? What family covenant?" Lucas didn't beat around the bush. His gaze had taken on a newfound seriousness. "Your name is Lila, and you've lost one soul. You're a descendant of the Harrison family from Cloud City. If all of this checks out, then you're the covenant partner my grandfather and your great-grandfather were destined to be, a match forged long ago. Our two families have been spiritually connected for generations, and our ancestors made a pact. The child with the greatest spiritual gift in the next generation would become our partner, together safeguarding the legacy of both our clans." The shock this sentence brought was no less intense than the scorching heat of the soul-calling jade. I couldn't help but scratch my ear and asked in disbelief, "Could you please repeat that?" Lucas didn't beat around the bush. "Your name is Lila, you've lost a soul fragment, and you're from Cloud City. If none of this is wrong, then you're my fiancé." "No, that can't be right. How could I possibly be your fiancé? What kind of arranged marriage? My parents never mentioned anything about that to me." I quickly shot back. The person I'd met on that eerie bus turned out to be my arranged fiancé? That's just too much of a coincidence. Lucas raised an eyebrow, his tone tinged with self-mockery. "Oh, you didn't know? Looks like your family never told you about our family secret." And that makes sense. Over the past few decades, the Harrison family has deliberately downplayed its mediumship heritage, choosing instead to live as ordinary people. Grandpa said that back then this covenant was actually proposed by your great-grandfather himself, and he even specially left behind a family crest as a token of the agreement. I can show it to you next time we meet. Wait a minute. Did he just mention my great-grandfather? But my parents only ever told me that my great-grandfather was an ordinary farmer who passed away when my dad was still a child. They never mentioned anything about a medium lineage or covenant partners. It's absolutely out of this world. Wait a minute, he mentioned my grandmother too? But Mom said my grandmother died when Dad was only 8 years old. She didn't even live to see me born. How could she possibly have made a covenant with me? Don't give me that skeptical look, Lucas said. This covenant is completely real. It was signed jointly by ancestors from both families and comes with written proof and the family seal. If you don't believe me, I'll show you the original document next time we meet. And besides, the soul-calling jade around your neck, that's the medium's token passed down through the Harrison family. Ordinary people simply wouldn't have something like that. All right, don't be afraid. I'll get you back home soon, he added. My emotions were utterly mixed, yet on the surface, I could only force myself to appear calm and silently nodded. Just then, a bone-chilling gust of cold wind suddenly burst forth from a half-finished building, rushing straight toward Lucas and me. Mixed in with the wind was a spine-tingling, eerie cackle. Hee, you fickle woman. Without Evan to protect you, today you're destined to become my little snack. That familiar voice, that familiar figure, it wasn't Silas. It was his younger brother, Elias. How come I keep running into him again? It instantly dawned on me. My soul fragment was indeed in his hands. Otherwise, the soul-calling jade wouldn't have felt so scorching hot. Give me back my soul fragment. I'm so furious, I shout at him. Elias gives a sinister grin, his wicked eyes brimming with greed. Looks like you've already figured it out. But too bad, this soul fragment? I have no intention of giving it back to you. To put it mildly, if Lucas hadn't stepped in front of me, Elias would have pounced on me and tore me apart alive, just like when we first met. He extends his pale fingers toward his own abdomen and says with malicious glee, because, you see, your soul fragment is already inside me. My face turns deathly pale in an instant, and my lips start trembling. Why, you ate it. What else was I supposed to do? Just keep staring at it every day? Over the years, I've put a lot of effort into keeping this soul fragment under control. He smirks darkly, his gaze locked onto mine, radiating pure malice. Lucas suddenly took a step forward, shielding me behind him and blocking Elias's malicious gaze. Her soul, you'll never be able to swallow it, Lucas said coldly, staring straight at Elias. It seemed only then that Elias noticed Lucas's presence. Sorry, he said with a hint of surprise. You're so low-key, I didn't even realize there was a cockroach lurking around here. I'd say you're more like a rat hiding in the shadows, Lucas replied, his tone icy and dismissive, no less cutting than Elias's. Hey, kid. When did you become her little lapdog? Elias teased, his voice dripping with sarcasm. I've got to hand it to you, you're not even afraid of Evan, that big jealous jerk. Hearing these insulting words, my anger flared up instantly. You sick pervert. Watch your mouth. What under-the-skirt lackeys? Can't you keep your filthy thoughts to yourself? Even a demon would dare to be this disgusting. And, by the way, give me back my soul fragment. Although I knew complaining was probably pointless, I couldn't help but make futile struggles anyway. You want your soul fragment back? Then you'd better have the guts to kill me. Elias paused briefly, then flashed a sly smile. But even if you did manage to kill me, it wouldn't matter. What's in my belly is just one of many fragments. I've no idea how many pieces your soul has been shattered into. Even if you got this one back, it'd still be useless. Elias's words almost made me spit up old blood. I'd thought losing just one soul fragment was bad enough, but now it turned out my soul had actually been broken into several pieces. Damn it, might as well just let everything fall apart. I stood frozen, my body numb and stiff, like a wooden statue behind Lucas. Lila, since there's nothing we can do about it anyway, why don't you just be a good person and grant me my wish? Elias laughed exaggeratedly, his face, though identical to Silas's, radiating pure malice and venom. His body dissolved into a swirling mass of black energy, rushing toward us with terrifying force. Lucas moved with lightning speed. At the very instant the black mist closed in, he raised his hand, and from the tips of his slender fingers suddenly emerged a jade-white spider, glowing faintly with a radiant luminescence. As soon as the spider appeared, a golden web materialized out of thin air, instantly intercepting and blocking the black mist's attack. The black mist slammed into the golden web, emitting a sizzling, burning sound, then recoiled, reconstituting itself into Elias's original form. He no longer looked as confident and composed as before. His gaze shifted toward Lucas, filled with both apprehension and an unyielding resentment, a deep-seated frustration at not having been able to consume me after all. Jade, attack. Lucas commanded the spider perched on his fingertip. The jade-white spider immediately leapt into the air, landing precisely on Elias's neck, sinking its fangs deep into his skin before swiftly hopping back into Lucas's hand. Elias clutched his neck, staring at Lucas in sheer horror. Jade-faced spider, he exclaimed, unable to stay any longer. He shot me a furious glare and then dissolved into a cloud of black mist, vanishing in an instant. Every time Elias comes out to cause trouble, he always manages to escape. I'm powerless to confront him, let alone catch him, and the more I think about it, the angrier I get. Lucas seemed to read my mind. Turning to me, he said, "Don't worry. Even if he's swallowed your soul fragment, he won't be able to refine it in just a short time. Just bring him back before the refining process. Jade left a mark on him, so we'll be able to find him. But you saw it yourself, he's cunning. Until we're absolutely sure, let's not alert him prematurely. I calmed down and nodded, then tilted my head back to look at him. Thanks for everything today. The bus tonight and Elias himself were both after me, weren't they? I'm sorry for dragging you into all this mess. My heart was heavy with guilt at involving Lucas in the feud between me and Elias. The soul-capturing jade pendant against my chest had already cooled off, meaning Elias had already fled far away. I lowered my head, feeling utterly dejected. Suddenly, a large hand rested gently on top of my head. Startled, I looked up and met Lucas's soft, gentle eyes in the night. His voice was calm and soothing as he said, "It's okay. Maybe we were meant to meet anyway. Tonight was just the perfect opportunity, wasn't it?" I pressed my lips together tightly, unsure of how to respond. Evan and I already shared an unbreakable bond. There was no way I could ever have any connection with Lucas again. "I'll look into that arranged marriage you mentioned earlier," I said after moments thought, then added frankly, "There's one more thing. I'm already seeing someone now. So even if we really did have that arranged marriage, all I can do is apologize." With Evan's personality, if he found out about the arranged marriage, I'd be terrified he'd just go straight for Lucas. But Lucas didn't seem like an ordinary guy either, especially not his jade-faced spider named Jade. And he actually gave his spider the name Jade? This spider was completely different from any other spider. Its body was a pure, jade-like white. Even though its legs were covered in fine fuzz, it didn't carry that eerie vibe typical of most spiders. It was almost cute, in fact. Lucas heard what I said, and a flicker of shock crossed his eyes, but he quickly masked it. "You already have someone you like?" he asked. Maybe I didn't exactly like Evan, but I knew I couldn't betray him. There was an intricate web of connections between us. After hesitating for a moment, I still nodded. "Yeah, that's right." Lucas let out a soft sigh, his voice barely audible. "Looks like I'm just a bit too late after all." I lowered my gaze to the tips of my shoes, momentarily at a loss for words. Perhaps sensing my discomfort, Lucas suddenly switched to a lighter tone and said, "Don't feel pressured about the arranged marriage thing. Fate is mysterious and unpredictable anyway. Come on, I'll walk you back." I glanced around. Everything was pitch black and desolate, with no sign of any transportation in sight. It seemed I'd have to walk another stretch of road. "I don't know the way around here, so I'll have to trouble you," I said. "All right, just stay close behind me," Lucas replied. He turned and headed toward the exit of the unfinished building. I hurried after him, not daring to pause for even a moment. Once we stepped out of the abandoned industrial zone, we found ourselves on a wide, bustling street filled with traffic, completely different from the desolate scene we'd just left behind. Lucas flagged down a taxi for me. After exchanging a few quiet words with the driver, he gestured for me to get in. But he himself didn't get in. He stood outside the car, leaning slightly forward to look into the cabin at me. On his handsome face, he wore a reassuring smile. "This cab's safe. You can rest easy and head home." "What about you?" I asked urgently. Lucas chuckled softly. "I'm not going the same way as you. You go ahead and get back home first." With that, he called out to the driver, "Sir, let's go." The driver immediately started the car. I leaned against the car window, watching Lucas's figure grow smaller and smaller, a pang of worry creeping into my heart. When I finally pulled my gaze away, I noticed a slender, silvery white thread drifting outside the window, shimmering faintly in the moonlight. I tried to get a better look, but suddenly the thread vanished without a trace. I told the driver the address of Return Manor, and after he heard it, his expression turned slightly strange. "Young lady, you live in such a remote place?" Evan's place was indeed secluded, but that was precisely what made it so peaceful. I nodded and said, "Yeah, it's pretty nice there." "Then you'd better be careful." The driver glanced at me briefly through the rearview mirror. "I've heard that area is kind of eerie, kind of not entirely safe." I kept my expression calm, and the driver seemed a bit put off, probably because he hadn't managed to scare me at all. I've seen so many bizarre things by now that I've become numb to them. Besides, that area is pretty much Evan's territory. I'm not really scared at all. 40 minutes later, the car arrived punctually at the bus stop where I usually get off. From there, I still had a bit of a walk ahead to reach Return Manor. Unexpectedly, as soon as I stepped out of the car, I saw a figure about half my height standing right next to the bus stop. Upon closer inspection, I realized he had a fluffy, bushy tail trailing behind him, and on top of his head were 2 furry ears. It was Hugo. I quickened my pace and called out, "Hugo, what are you doing here?" Actually, Hugo had spotted me even before the car pulled up. When I approached him, I noticed he was staring at me quietly, his eyes glowing with a faint greenish light. "I'm here to pick you up," he said. Hugo's tone still sounded old-fashioned and serious. I really hadn't expected him to come out specifically to pick me up. "Thanks, Hugo," I said, pleasantly surprised. Hugo nodded solemnly and turned around, heading toward Return Manor. "I made you a late-night snack. Go back and have a bite." I was shocked all over again. "Hugo, you can even make late-night snacks?" A hint of disdain appeared on Hugo's youthful face. "Cheese macaroni? What's so hard about that? As long as you pick good cheese and get the heat just right, it'll taste great no matter how you make it." Another trace of disdain showed on Hugo's young face. "Late-night snacks? What's there to it? As long as the seasoning's good, even boiled shoe soles would taste delicious." "Hugo, you're amazing," I praised sincerely. "Hugo who knows how to cook. That's totally awesome." Hugo still snorted disdainfully. "All right, stop buttering me up, just eat already." I'd expected him to turn around and leave, but instead he sat down across from me, staring straight at me with an intensity that made me feel a bit guilty. "Hugo, why are you staring at me like that?" I asked cautiously. "Finish eating first," he said curtly. I quickly devoured my late-night snack. Hugo had actually made cheese macaroni. Rich, creamy cheese coated the chewy macaroni noodles, and it was sprinkled with a layer of crispy bacon bits, making it taste absolutely authentic. Seeing that I'd polished off the entire plate, Hugo's expression seemed to soften slightly. "Come on, tell me, why did you come home so late today?" Hugo's face suddenly turned serious. "Be honest, or I won't be able to explain this to Evan." "There's nothing to hide about what happened tonight." I told him everything, down to the last detail. But who would have guessed that after hearing my story, Hugo's eyebrows would knit together into a tight knot. "You're saying you ran into a man named Lucas, and he even had a jade white spider?" Hugo's face was full of astonishment. "Yeah, that's right," I nodded. Hugo rested his chin on his hand, lost in thought, his brow furrowing even deeper. After a moment, he turned to me and said, "It'd be best if you didn't tell Evan about tonight's events. That's just my advice. Whether you take it or not is up to you." "Why?" I asked curiously. Just as Hugo was about to speak, a chilling gust of cold wind suddenly slipped through the crack under the door, sending the dishes on the table clattering softly. Then, without a sound, a red figure appeared silently in the doorway, radiating an intense aura of malevolence. The temperature in the room plummeted in an instant, and even the lights began flickering wildly, flashing on and off erratically. The figure lowered its head, its long red hair cascading forward to obscure its face. All that could be seen were a pair of feet clad in red leather shoes, steadily approaching me, step by step. Hugo's face instantly turned deathly pale. His tail behind him stiffened to a straight line. Every single hair on his body stood on end as he stared intently at the red figure. His voice trembled as he asked, "Why you? How did you come back?"